Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, listening to us from across the country and overseas. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome. It has been reported widely that the IMF delegation has been in the town for last 24 hours or so, and this is the third hectic visit discussing the matter with the government for $4.5 billion bailout package. The government is saying it is about supporting the budgetary deficit that the regime has been experiencing. However, there are critics to it, saying that it is due to the hectic mismanagement of the regime for the last 14 years, that they are simply unable to deal with the economic mismanagement and sort out the trashes they had deposited for the last decade or so. In this perspective, AB Party, Amar Bangladesh Party, a newly formed political platform since May 2020, has been speaking out on behalf of the people. What should have been the topic for the discussion? What should have been discussed widely among the political parties, the dissents, and civil society members? Yet, there are no discussions at all. We're only hearing one-sided discussions the regime and the government would like us to talk about. We therefore felt compelled to talk on behalf of the people, what is good for them, what is in our national interest, the national interest of the nation and the country, to talk about the issues to deal with. And therefore, we had organized this short, brief webinar to portray our message, to spell out the national interests, which should have been talked about, but yet very little discussions about it. Since the independence of the country, the source and the reason has been very clear. It has been the 1970s election where the current ruling party, Awami League, won landslide. Yet, the Pakistani Janta had deprived us of that very mandate. And that was the starting point, how the freedom struggle started all along, which culminated into the independence of the country. What we have noticed after the independence, the economic misadventure and mismanagement, the wrong policies, derived the country towards the regressive policies and errors which did not succeed and being helpful for our economy of the country. However, what we have noticed in late 70s, there is a policy shift to the right directions where the economy opened up to the world. We joined the free trades and the different phenomena opened the interest of the people. Particularly our large expat communities in the different countries has been started to go off, which were the starting point, getting remittance in billions of dollars over the decades. However, for last 2 decades, we have seen, despite the economic growth, there are true desperate mismanagement by this regime, which culminated in lack of democracy, accountability, rule of law, and deprivating human rights conditions. We therefore felt that it is the need of the time to propose alternative versions of the development which the government has proposed. As you may know, that there has been a set date for 2026 for the LDC graduation for the country. However, we feel our challenges have become more pressing in last decade or so due to the economic mismanagement this regime had presided over by. In that regard, we felt that IMF bailout discussion has to be based on our national interest and the national interest of the country. We found out there are 4 major areas that the economic mismanagement took place under this regime. Particularly, first, we felt inflated cost of infrastructure and wasteful vanity projects. Secondly, widespread financial scams and complete collapse of regulations. Third, cartel captured energy and food prices. Fourth, unaccounted capital flight out of the country into the different Western hemisphere. We therefore felt that any undemocratic or illegitimate government cannot have the true discussions destined for the nation and the country. And we, AB Party, had proposed 5-point solutions to come out of this mega trap that we had fell into it. First, The deepening economic crisis has all its roots in the regime's deliberate crippling of democratic accountability, thereby creating the conditions for unprecedented and unchecked plunder by the regime and collaborators. We felt the overrun of mega development projects and massive illicit capital flights that is still interconnected in a vicious circle of authoritarianism and corruptions that must stop. We urge, therefore, the IMF must address at least two interrelated matters in this regard with Bangladesh. First, addressing corruptions in a meaningful way that is similar to what it did in the case of Sri Lanka. Third, we felt to leave the implementations of Bangladesh and IMF agreement into the regime will not be of much helpful to this nation and the national interest. We felt fixing the banks cannot be encharged to the bank robbers, and therefore it must be done left to be done by the truly accountable government as the nation fills in a free, fair elections. Fourth, we felt the care must be given to ensure that the cost of reforms are not transferred to the mass people. We witnessed recently the rounds and rounds after of price hike of electricity, gas and water simply did not happen because it was needed, but because it was the prescribed form that was proposed by IMF as regarded by the regime. We felt it was unnecessary. Rather, it should have focused to reduction of corruptions in our financial sectors. And fourth, that truly a package that has been proposed for $4.5 billion into 3.5 years' time cannot be materialized by any unaccountable corrupt regime, but it can surely be entrusted by a truly elected government, which this government doesn't have any.